Hey, can you see my presentation and hear me well?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we can.
Well, thank you, Anna, for the introduction, and of course, thank you to the rest of the organization team for inviting me and giving me the space to share a bit about my research. So, as you can see by the title, today I'm going to speak about the representation of non-human otherness, environmentalist themes, and extinction in Frank Herbert's Dune franchise. And given that my intention is to offer an exploration of the potential that science fiction storytelling has in helping us better understand human nature, our relationship with the other forms of life that surround us, and better understand the responsibilities that we hold towards our planet, I will start by briefly outlining a couple of other seminal works within the same genre that also examine the relationship between humans and our natural environment, its endangerment, and the extinction or disappearance of species as their core themes. Um, in doing so, my hope is to offer an overview of some of the characteristics that make science fiction, I would say, optimal canvases for us to portray and examine the matters that define our existence and analyze our relationship with animals and non-human otherness, but at the same time, give us the chance to see a reflection of the possible consequences of our own actions. So, as Jennifer Clements puts it, this genre, science fiction, is characterized by a speculative nature and by a freedom from the boundaries of what is currently possible, which would make it an ideal testing ground for ethical concerns regarding non-human animals. And what is more, many of the alien characters present in the works belonging to this genre frequently serve as a means to represent non-human animals. As author Cheryl Vint also explains, they can be aliens. They can be represented in terms that we typically associate with animals, raising questions about how we interact with living animals, environmentalism, and even human-animal symbiosis, but also about animals as companions or fellow sentient beings. Imagining the future of our own planet, our own species, and our relationship with nature is a pervasive theme within science fiction. And perhaps one of the earliest examples would be that of H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. One of the most defining characteristics of this genre is that its works tend to mirror some of humankind's most inherent worries and concerns within the time and context they were written in. And as we can see in H.G. Wells's case, in Christina Alt's words, in his late Victorian works of scientific romance, he expresses a pessimistic attitude arising in part from evolutionary ideas circulating at the time. So, in the case of this novel, he expresses anxieties over devolution, which were popular at the time, seeing as the future human species he describes is differentiated into two kinds: the Eloi, described as beautiful humanoid creatures and living easily comfortable lives, and the Morlocks, mysterious underground dwellers that feed on the Eloi while also feeding and being in charge of clothing them, establishing a symbiotic relationship between both of them. Arguably, in the future that the author imagines, humankind is not extinct as a species, but the human civilization has degenerated as a consequence of, as Simon J. James puts it, mankind's neglect of its own future survival. Another ideal present in this story is that of the ultimate conquest of nature, which would lead to the Eloi's feebleness, their idleness, and the halt of their evolution in the end. The second literary work I would like to mention is Ursula K. Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest. This novel, set in an alternative history timeline where human evolution didn't begin on Earth, presents one of the most frequent themes, in science fiction, that is, species annihilation and human belligerence. This story takes place on planet Athshi, which has been colonized by Terran humans and renamed New Tahiti. The native inhabitants are practically enslaved, and their lands, which in the past used to be forests, are being deforested, seeing as timber wood is extremely scarce on Earth. Interestingly enough, even though in this universe a common origin for all humanoid species, the Athshi natives, whom colonizers derogatively call Creechies, are not even considered humans. In Rob Latham's words, this novel reflects some of the main anxieties and concerns of the early 70s. For example, the effects of ecological devastation and the assertion of the rights of nature and native peoples over and against the needs of Western neocolonialism. We can see that, as he further explains, through the depiction of a home planet literally bereft of foliage, dependent on alien jungles to satisfy its appetite for clean, sown plants, more prized on earth than gold. And also the fact that after a gruesome war between both humans and creatures, in the end, Terran humans do take off, the remaining surviving colonists, and agree to not return to Athshi except for limited scientific and observatory reasons, establishing some sort of peace between the native culture and Terran humans. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, my main focus is going to be on Frank Herbert's Dune saga, which was published between the years 1965 and 1985. It has been adapted for the big screen several times, the most well-known adaptations being David Lynch's 1984 film and Denis Villeneuve's 2021 Dune and this year's Dune Part 2. My motivation to choose these bodies of work is based on the fact that I consider these novels, as well as their different adaptations, to be great examples of how science fiction narratives can help us explore the problems regarding the state of our world. They can serve as an imaginary testing ground for possible solutions to the challenges that the Anthropocene era might bring forth. The Dune lore and universe is quite complex and full of important details, so the first thing I should probably clarify is the story's timeline. The first novel takes place 20,000 years in the future and places humanity far away from planet Earth, living on different planets around the universe and organized in a feudalistic political system known as the Empire. This political system is in fact quite fragile and vulnerable, the main reason being that its survival depends on a psychoactive and addictive substance known as the spice melange. Its importance relies on its many life-enhancing and geriatric properties, as well as the fact that its withdrawal is very dangerous. This substance is exclusively found on planet Arrakis, also known as Dune, and has a great value due to its multiple uses and properties. It can extend life, it is used for food, it is a compound of basic materials, and it can even be used for weapons and as a psychic stimulant, given that it confers prescient abilities. Perhaps this last detail is the most important one, given that the navigators of the Space Guild, an important organization that guarantees and directs the commerce between the planets in the Empire, use spies to foresee and trace the safest routes for their interstellar travels. In fact, their extended use of this substance mutates and alters their bodies to the point where their appearance is rather more amphibian than human-like, so they must live in tanks filled with spice gas. Another significant detail regarding this substance is that, seeing as the possession of this psychotropic drug grants an immeasurable power within the Empire, its acquisition is extremely complicated. That being said, the main non-human animal presence throughout the story that these books comprise is that of the creatures known as sandworms, which offer a very interesting opportunity for discussion regarding the treatment of animals as capital, the political relevance they may have, and the consequences of their extinction, especially when the survival of humankind depends on said animals. And that is the case of these creatures, the sandworms, who inhabit the planet known as Arrakis. This planet is a territory of great political importance, seeing as it's the only source of this substance, the aforementioned spice melange. As a matter of fact, the production of this substance depends entirely on these animals, which inhabit and through their life cycle simultaneously alter and depend on the ecosystem of Dune. The production of this coveted substance is a secret known by very few, including the native people of Arrakis known as the Fremen, who refer to sandworms as Shai Hulud or makers, among other denominations. So the fact that they know this secret ends up being a very political, a very important political weapon. The survival of the sandworms also requires an environment completely devoid of water, given that it is poisonous to them. So, of course, this means that life for humans on the same planet can be extremely harsh. Excuse me. Yeah. So, regarding the different representations of these animals, it is interesting to note that they are seen as deities, being revered as gods, and regarded as symbols of the power of the desert. They are also used for transportation and attacks, given their colossal measures and power. And in relation to that, they are also used for rites of passage, such as the sandworm riding test that a Fremen must go through. But interestingly enough, they are never hunted to be used as food, perhaps their reverence or huge measures being some of the reasons. However, in one of their younger states, they can be drowned so as to extract their stomach bile, a precious liquid known as the water of life used in cultural rites. This, as well as their importance in the production of the most important substance in the universe, automatically makes them be considered as capital. Throughout the books, the ecosystem of Arrakis keeps changing according to the political decisions and human needs, consequently affecting the sandworms and their survival possibilities. Their religious and totemic symbolism also keeps changing throughout the story, affecting how they are perceived by humans. But ultimately, their disappearance is never truly due to natural causes, but rather anthropogenic ones. During the thousands of years that the whole saga takes place in, the terraforming of Arrakis causes the gradual disappearance and near extinction of sandworms only until a few specimens are left. The constant fluctuation of the sandworm survival chances, its life being subject to the political decisions made by humans and their interest in exploiting it, as well as the deliberate changes in the planet's ecosystem according to these interests, position these creatures on the brink of extinction, and their chances of being saved depend completely on a political interest. That is, its capacity to produce something that has the same value as fossil fuel in our own world. So, to conclude, I believe that as many science fictional works, the Dune works not only give us the chance to explore the parallels between animal rights and fictional universes and the real world, or examining how human identity is built against animal identity, but they also serve as cautionary tales, making us put into perspective our own Anthropocene-centric relationship with non-human animals and our environment. Ultimately, they push us to rethink our ethical duties towards nature and reflect on the consequences of structuring our wealth based on animal capital and exploitation, disregarding the ecological and ethical implications. So thank you very much. These are my references. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.